this episode of Therapy Bites Art Lab.
Hey T-Ballers, thank you for joining us today. We have a very special episode and we're glad to be streaming into the studio, into the art lab, Amrit Singh today. He is a world-class expert on spirituality, on how to be successful at your spirituality. He has lived all over the world, in Germany, in India. He currently resides in the great country of Mexico with his lovely wife. And we're just so glad to have him here today, and we could spend all day on this. You know, the stuff about theology, spirituality, and religion, man, that's just my jam. I have an undergraduate degree in theology, religion philosophy specifically, and I just love learning about new things. And I think as a culture, the more we learn about others, well, the more peace we're going to have. Warfare, I think, is caused by differences, and I think those differences disappear the more we learn about each other.
Welcome to Therapy Bites Art Lab, where Dr. Heath and his special guests share real-life stories of helping and healing, fresh from the actual therapy couch, while taking a bite out of common counseling missteps and misconceptions. And now, here's Heath and the T-Ball team.
Amrit, thank you so much for being here today, and we're going to jump right in with your thoughts on some things. I notice you talk about the difference between spirituality and religion. What's your take on that?
Thanks for having me. First of all, it's awesome to be part of this. For me, religion was something which as a kid I was not interested in at all. Like my parents were semi-spiritual and there was church going happening and I got my confirmation and all those things. And it was always just kind of this, going through the motions. And it didn't click for me. But then I always felt like there's more. I felt this connection to, or this urge to want to dive deeper. But I didn't really have a point because going to church didn't do it for me. And there was, not much going on. And then I think it was like around 13, 14, 15 when I started smoking weed, which really helped me to experience some kind of different reality. And so I really got into that. And then after a while, I realized, man, I'm stoned all the time. This is no good. Nothing happens here in this moment when you are like that. But I felt this motivation. There is something in there, there's something expansion, something special in there. And so I started meditating and I started doing yoga and I got that same feeling I got from smoking weed, just without feeling stoned and without feeling exhausted and burned out. And so it really allowed me to expand myself and feel myself on a level that made my life richer and more real. And that was kind of the entry into a spiritual lifestyle. And then when I learned about the religion of Sikhism, I was just thinking, oh my God, another religion, and I'm not interested in that. But then I connected to the lifestyle choices, like to grow a beard, to tie a turban, to tie my hair up in a rishi knot. And I realized how that really improved my meditation and my connection to spirituality. And so I kept practicing it. And then I looked at myself after a while in the mirror and I was like, I look like a religious person. Really, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to connect to my spirituality. And I used these tools which were kind of abused in a religious setting to say like, oh, if you don't have a turban, then you might just not be as valuable as me with my turban. And so these kinds of issues always repulse me from the religious approach. And so as I was learning more about and digging deeper in Christianity and Islam and Buddhism, I realized that all these amazing traditions were started through a lifestyle choice and through living a spiritual life. And then us humans turned it into something religious, which started limiting people and separating people and making people small rather than uplifting everybody around.
I think that's a great point, and I think in my research into many different religions is religion is more of a process or a form, but people often at some point begin to confuse form or process with depth, which is more spirituality, and the form will eclipse the depth. And as a Christian, I see that quite frequently. It's all about form, that you have to attend church 2.7 times a week, and you have to dress in this way, and you have to speak in this way, and you have to associate in this way. And the problem with that is it just replaces, I think, what's important. People get into how they look. I remember during Hurricane Katrina, a person I thought was a very, very spiritual person, and I heard this from more than one person. We don't need that kind of people in our church. And they're talking about the people misplaced by the hurricane. I thought, holy moly, how disappointed Jesus would be, because that kind of people is actually the kind of people he hung out with. The people that didn't have the right look and didn't have, what wasn't just another domino. And people, it seems to me that they confuse form and process with the true depth of spirituality. And you see that in your religion as well. Is that correct?
Of course, yeah, all the time. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, with anything, as soon as you get humans involved, it really very quickly goes there. And it's always the issue is it's based on good intentions. It's like, oh, the reason I'm making you go to my temple and pray is because I know it's going to help you so much. But I don't see the whole side effect of the damage I create by not letting you choose your own path. And I think that's really the biggest problem we have with all the organized religion. And, unfortunately, like probably if you could speak to any of these religious leaders, you just brought up Jesus, that was probably one of the last things they wanted us to make out of these beautiful teachings, is like some religion which is being used to manipulate and make people, move away from their heart and move away from their identity and their being. Like one of these favorite quotes I have, which I like a lot, is, if you can't see God in all, you can't see God at all. And so
wow.
That's
I've never
really
heard that.
like
That's fantastic.
I like that. Mm-hmm.
If you can't see God in all,
it's
you
always a
can't see God.
reminder when I say like, oh yeah, maybe that person is not as spiritual or as elevated as I am, then I see that as my own little warning flag to be like, oh, there goes the ego.
Well, psychologically, which is what we do, we're a group of licensed clinicians, and we all practice. The key word, is practice. We hope we're getting better at it. It is a bit of an art form, but the psychology behind that is people get into these religions, and the first thing they're confronted with is a pattern, a way of doing things. With your religion, it is the beard and the turban and the temple, and it's similar in Hasidic Judaism. There's a certain way of dressing and even praying, and there are people in Christianity that still pray in King James English, as if that's the language God speaks. He speaks in thou and these and all that. And I remember seeing a bumper sticker, if the King James Version was good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for me. Well, a little history lesson is in order here. Jesus did not have the King James Version of the Bible. That came a millennia or so after his death. But people get into patterns. That's not a bad thing, because it gives you some framework in which to practice your faith. But when that pattern becomes the faith itself, that's the problem. And if it's so highly patternized, I think it gets in the way of the relationship. Mm-hmm. And that's the purpose. I ask folks in my religion, what do you think is the main thing about your faith or Christianity, and that they start talking form. I'm supposed to do these things. It's a set of to-dos. And I will challenge them and say, don't you think that it should be about a relationship? And what do you think about that, Amrit? Do you think that, I mean, is that what you find in your religion, is that it should be more about a relationship?
We're a little luckier in Sikhism because our religion is only 300 years old. So it really only allowed us humans 300 years of tripping it up. I mean, it's already happening. But, it was founded on the principles of kindness, of serving others, of uplifting others, of honoring other people's path to God and to their own way of experiencing that. Big part of our religion is that we don't go out and become missionaries and try to convince others. And so it's much more about what can I do to improve the lives of those around me. And so really when it comes to that point, and when people, we have a lot of practices, and I guess that's why I still connect myself to the Sikh religion, and I'm not just saying I'm a guy with a beard and a turban who's not a Sikh. It's because I see a lot of benefit in that, and just going out of your way and serving someone else is just the most powerful thing you can do, in my opinion.
I agree. Tell us a little bit about the turban and the beard. What is the significance of those?
Actually, the beard, and I have long hair too, is the unshorn hair or the uncut hair is a symbol which really goes all the way back into biblical times, like the story of Samson and how they would shave the slave's head because it was a way to take away power. And it was a way to say, okay, you do not have the right to keep your hair long. And so for us as Sikhs, we keep our body unaltered. So we say the reason we as men have a long beard is because, God thought of putting hair there. The reason we have eyebrows is because hair is supposed to grow there. Like when we get like a new fashion where everybody shaves off their eyebrows and shaves off their, like whatever you can shave off. And then suddenly it becomes the accepted way, how it was a couple hundred years ago. It was like the beard was a sign of, oh, you're too poor to go to a barber. Oh, you're too uneducated. That's why you don't have the time to shave every morning. And so it was a sign of cleanliness and prosperity and wealth. And so people kind of went with that. But really what it is when you shave off your beard, your appearance changes and you look different. Like, for example, a little boy will have short hair and no beard. That's this God-provided form we're living in is for us men very different how it is for women. So I want to talk about the beard for a second. It's actually, in the yogic tradition, and this goes back many thousand years from the yogis in the Himalayas who spoke about this, is our head has two centers. Like on the top, there's the sun center, which connects us to the energy of the sun. And then on the bottom is the moon center, which is right this center point in your chin. It's actually the point where when you get hit on, you get knocked out, because that's that point. And it's also that same point, you might have seen this before, when someone is about to start crying, it starts shivering a little bit. It's this little point right here. And that is the moon center. And hair is designed like antennas. So what hair does on our body yogically is it allows sun energy to travel through the hair to the location where the hair is attached. So this is why we have hair in all those important locations where we need that additional sun energy, under our armpits, in the pubic area, on the eyebrows. All these areas bring sun energy to the location. And so for us men to have a beard, it allows that sun energy to travel into the moon point and it allows us to be in more balance and more stability, because that's how our physical body as man is designed.
It sounds like
And
we're
funny enough,
talking about what we might call radical self-acceptance, that there is a design to how we are engineered, and it has purpose and meaning.
oh yes, very much. And fun enough, is not necessary for women. That's why women don't grow a beard. It's just that simple. You know, women still have armpit hair, which is important to balance their overall being, but they do not need the beard. And so this is like such an important and unique thing. And in connection, it also connects to the head hair, which I keep long. And so what I do is I roll my hair and I put it in a knot on top of my head. You know, maybe you can see it here on my turban.
Oh, yeah.
It allows the energy from the sun to be converted and travel through the antennas of the hair into the crown of my head. And so this has nothing to do with being a Sikh. This is 5,000-year-old knowledge from the yogis in the mountains. That's why when you look around, all the yogis had long hair. You know, Jesus had long hair. Everybody used to have a beard. The samurais still have long hair up to today. You know, the American Indians all had long hair and had this ability to read tracks. You know, they used them in the Civil War as trackers, and they brought them into the army, and they said, oh, but now you're in the army, you need to look like everybody else. Just shave your head so you're a good soldier and you fit into the uniform properly. And so they did that, and these trackers lost their ability and lost their intuition and sensitivity to be able to track the same way they could before. And so these are the cool little things, you know, connected to long hair.
I think that that kind of gets into what I'd like to talk about next when it comes to spirituality and even religion as a part of that. Is one of the things that we humans, I think, have made us such a prosperous species is we know how to celebrate humanity. We know how to embrace our humanity. At heart, I'm a existentialist philosopher, and one of my favorite philosophers is Soren Kierkegaard. And when he died, he put on his tombstone, or had put on his tombstone, he wasn't around to do it himself, is the individual. And other existentialist philosophers would view the greatest label that anyone can have is human. And I think that that's one of the most important parts in spirituality is looking at ourselves as enough. We don't have to be other. We don't have to be different. We don't have to transform into something different. We can be truly what we're made to be, and that is human. Do you find that engaging in spiritual pursuits actually makes you more human or keeps you more grounded?
Most certainly. It's what I found is in the beginning of my path, it was very much about expanding upwards. You know, it's like, you know, you want to experience the high, you want to meditate, you want to go deep into this experience. And I really liked what you just said. Did it make me more grounded? It didn't in the beginning. It made me more spaced out, and it made me kind of floaty and superficial. And so when I realized how important it was to ground myself through my practice, through my approach to reality, through staying really grounded, you know, I could grow much more. And it's a little bit like a big tree that is growing, you know, like you can put all your energy in making it pretty and big up top, but if you do not focus on putting those roots down just as deep, the next big wind is going to blow you over.
Yeah, and you know, and this isn't said to be critical of anybody listening. I certainly like cool spiritual experiences. I like warm fuzzy wuzzies, but it seems that a lot of people get really distracted by chasing some experience instead of chasing those roots that you're talking about. And people do the same thing in marriages and relationships. They think, I don't have enough fuzzy wuzzies, in the relationship, maybe I shouldn't be in the relationship, which we call in psychology emotional reasoning. But I find the same thing in religion, is that people aren't chasing depth, they're chasing an experience. They want to be able to jump up and down and shout. They want to hear God speaking from behind a cloud. They want to have some type of epiphany. And I think that one of the greatest things about spirituality, which animals can't have, your dog doesn't have any kind of organized religion or spirituality, but they do really involve themselves in being what? In being what they're created to be. While we humans are running around trying to be otherwise or elsewise. And I see that as a distraction. That becomes to me just religion. That is just process. You do this, A, B, C, D. But as you spoke of, where are your roots? I mean, that seems to have no depth if you're just always chasing after an experience. Sikhs, they have experiences that they chase after?
Yeah, it's part of the, it's part of the beginning, because this is why I talked about smoking weed, which was like an experience. And then I started meditating deeply and I got these similar experiences and I thought, oh my God, I found the magic grail. But then I realized it's so much more about the grounding, because that's what does it. And funny enough, if you break down the word religion, religio means to connect to your roots. And so that's really what it's all about. But unfortunately, in all our organized religions, Sikhism very much included, that's the thing which gets forgotten.
Welcome to Social Media Smackdown. Tonight, the irresistible force meets the illogical object. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to reason!
Doc Keith here, your friendly neighborhood neuromechanic. There are all types of therapy websites out there, and most of them are actually very good, but you still have to consume them like chicken. Eat the meat, spit out the bones. Well, guys, here is a bone, and I will read it directly from Therapists Who Rock. And you know what? Therapists do rock, and this is a great site, but sometimes even they need to be called into check. The posting was, I have a client who lost his young son. It feels like he is an emotional vampire. All I want to do is sleep after he's gone. Check number one, that is not a feeling, that is a belief. There is no feeling that will give you evidence that someone is a emotional vampire. Check number two, correction number two, cognitive restructuring check number two, yes, even for therapists that post such things, is guess what? There's no such thing as vampires. I thought we had settled that. I thought we'd settled that long ago. Nonetheless, there's no such thing as emotional vampires. What's going on with this clinician? Well, the same thing that goes on with lots of patients is that they are using emotional reasoning. They are mind reading, they're catastrophizing, they're underthinking, all these things. And this is actually from a clinician. Now, this is good news, guys, because if clinicians can devolve into these types of distorted ways of thinking, well, then stop beating yourself up for doing it, because even clinicians are susceptible to it. There's no such thing as an emotional vampire. And another clinician, instead of correcting it, actually responded. It's very draining, and I completely understand. I've done this for 38 years. No patient has the power to drain me. Where does that come from? Well, based on how I decide to look at what's going on, I drain myself. But why? Because I am catastrophizing and underthinking. Look, if you don't like therapy, then McDonald's is hiring every day. But yes, therapy can be hard work, but what that means is you need super duper uber healthy therapists, and that starts with accurate, realistic thinking. Live the art life, and you won't fall into these distorted ways of thinking about such things as vampires and zombies and boogeymen in the corners and under your bed and things that go bump in the night. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time.
What a slobber knocker! The winner by Psychological Smackdown, Doug Heath! No pronouns were harmed during the production of this podcast.
You're listening to Therapy Bites Art Lab, bite-sized therapy for your brain with Dr. Heath and the T-Ball team. The best advice on the net. No copay required.
Individual psychological concepts are very different animals from one another. And while they are often readily observable in the wild, the Therapy Bites Art Lab Zoo affords us a unique opportunity to study them in a safe and controlled environment. Welcome to the Therapy Bites Art Lab Creature Feature. Oh, good heavens!
During this creature feature, we're going to talk about the universalizing ant. Universalizing ants, which stands for automatic negative thought, by the way, believe that every non-preferred situation will always turn out in the same difficult, traumatic, and terrible way. So situation A led to situation B, and it's always, always, always going to be that way. But nope, that's not accurate. We don't know what the future holds. We don't know if that situation is going to turn out to be the same. It likely won't. No situation is 100% the same. So next time you have the universalizing ant up in your noggin, what I want you to do is practice Artie's accurate, realistic thoughts. Artie is the one who can exterminate the universalizing ant. Thank you for joining me for this creature feature, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. Catch you next time.
Thank you for joining us for the Therapy Bites Art Lab Creature Feature.
Here's Heath and the T-Ball team.
Something that we like to work with clients on, and I've noticed you've talked about grounding a lot, is we try to help them focus on living in the present moment, because, you know, there's so many things going on, so many things to take our attention, and we can be thinking about the future, thinking about the past, but we're completely missing out on what's going on right now. So when you're talking about grounding, is that a big part of it, trying to live in the present?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because what it does when you live in the present is you automatically get grounded, because you're here. You're not there in the future or worried about the past on the other side, and your energy doesn't get pulled away from you, but it comes to you. And that's why, for me, in my lifestyle, it's so essential to be present in whatever way. You know, if it's going for a walk, if it's playing with my dog, if it's, you know, just being present with my family and my kids and just playing a game, that can be a more religious and more spiritual experience than a 2-hour meditation for me.
I love that, because we teach meditation, not really, I guess, the way a lot of people do. We don't overcomplicate it. And I like to teach people that you can engage in mindfulness during any activity. For instance, when I'm making my standard black pepper, black maca, 7 sacred mushroom, turmeric infused lattes in the morning, I do it in a mindful meditative state. And I'm focused in on every step, but most people's minds are like a mall map. You know, you imagine a huge mall, and there are all these stores, and there's the big mall map that says you're here. But see, no one ever wants to be here. They only look at the mall map to be somewhere else, and their brain becomes like a mall map. It's never about being here. It's always about wanting to be somewhere else. And my point with making the 7 sacred mushroom coffee, I get that stuff from Amazon, by the way. I don't grow my own mushrooms, but it grounds me in the here and now, and develops a mindset that what I'm doing now is not running a small country. It's not becoming some big politician or a moon mission, but it still has value. You know, things don't have to make it to the evening news to have value. Even making yourself coffee in the morning or spending a moment with your pet, Amrit, as you spoke, has value. And that's another aspect of spirituality for me, is I think that it grounds me in finding meanings in things which I would have otherwise overlooked. Now that gets us to another point I want to talk about, because you're a life coach. And what are some things that you tend to tackle when you're coaching somebody? What are some high points that you tend to tackle with your life coaching?
Well, for me, one of the centerpieces where it always comes back to is what makes you happy. You know, where is that point where if you could do this all day long and no one would pay you any money for it, you would just still keep doing it. And I feel like that's kind of the centerpiece for me, because that was my journey too, you know, where I really wanted to know what is it, what I can do every day, all the time, and I feel joy and I feel happy and I feel fulfilled in this way of connecting with myself. So that's the center for me for all my coaching.
If someone's in a job and they have to work the job, they have to feed their family, they don't really have another job opportunity, is there advice or guidance that you give to them that help them find more joy where they are in that job?
Yeah, so I work with people like that, and my first advice is always stay in your job, because that's gonna be step one. Maybe in the future, you know, like we can build something with whatever your love is. Maybe your job is, you know, at the gas station, but you always wanted to be a woodworker. And maybe we can create something of how you can create your art into something which can provide a living. But this does not work if today you don't have money and you announce to your family that you quit your job because you got yourself a life coach and he said, be happy now.
Yes.
Yeah, quit your job and move to Mars. There's gold there. I mean, yeah, I think it, you know, and what I see with folks is it is a failure to look deeply, which we call underthinking, because I think that there is intrinsic value in doing, well, whatever. I think I put out a post that said that, as I often like to say, that the present moment comes to us as an empty gift box. And it's really up to us what we're going to fill that box with. And I think we can fill that with thoughts of how this job has meaning. And people talk about burnout. How do you help people? Do you encounter people that complain of burnout, and how do you help those people?
Yeah, and it's connected. It's usually connected to the job and to the regular family life and kids, and trying to be at 10 places at the same time and just pushing without taking care of yourself first. And so that's how people burn out, because we're all used to, you know, like with 15, 20, 25, we have never ending amounts of energy and we can just keep going. And then suddenly things start changing. And I think this is really what it comes down to. Even though I tell my people in the first meeting is, hey, don't quit your job, we come up with a plan and say, okay, maybe in a year from now, how could life be different that you could be quitting your job or find a different job or follow your passion and find a way to support your family in the way. And then suddenly this 1 year of keeping your job becomes something which has meaning, and it becomes something which allows you to travel from point A to point B. And then suddenly going to your job allows you to feel purpose and to know why you're doing it. And, you know, like whatever the job is, doesn't matter then, because that job fulfills a purpose to get you closer to your dreams.
Is there a spiritual component there? Because I find that people often don't do well connecting what you might call real life, the job, to their spiritual self or their practice of spirituality. How can you help people kind of connect the two?
I think one of the biggest issues that we're having is that we all experience spirituality as something outside of us. And, you know, like it's like I'm going to a yoga class, or I'm going to a meditation retreat, or I'm going to church to have my spiritual experience, and then I come back to my regular life. But really what it comes down to is not that we are human beings having a spiritual experience, but that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And so that's, as soon as that clicks, where we're really saying like, wow, I'm so much more than this human form. I'm so much more than this mind. I'm so much more than these emotions. And I want to share this light and this being with the world. Then it gets interesting.
I think that we are. I think that we should, and this, I stole this from Immanuel Kant, that, and I'll kind of butcher the quote, but I'll keep the meaning intact, hopefully, that we should live as if others could adopt our way of living, and the whole world would be better because of it. And I think that's something each of us should be able to say, that I could recommend the way I live to my son, to my best friends, to my loved ones, in fact, to the whole world, and they would be better because of it. Because most people, I find, get off track because they're too focused on self and pleasure, and instead of focusing on pleasure, you focus on what's the healthiest behavior that I can recommend to others. And I think that can be a very spiritual thing. What are some common struggles that you find people run into that you're coaching?
Common struggles are exactly that gap between, okay, I want to do what I love, but I don't think this can pay my rent. I don't think this can provide for my family. And so it's really that old mindset which pulls you back to, hey, I should have not quit my job after a year. I should have just stayed and, gotten that promotion, and it paid for the mortgage and it was all good. And now I'm doing this crazy thing, but trying to become an artist because I wanted to play music since I'm 12. And now I'm in this situation, right? But so it's really this being pulled back into the old ways and struggling with trusting deeply into yourself. Yeah. And that's what we work on.
Charlie Paycheck was a great country singer, but don't take his advice. Take this job and shove it. I ain't working here no more. All things in good time. Have a plan, work your plan. Windows, doors of opportunity are open, but do it in a sane, planned way.
You had mentioned about people talking about burnout, that they don't take care of themselves. What are some of the, is spirituality part of that? And what other, what other things do you suggest for them with self-care?
What I found is spirituality can be beneficial, and it can help you with when you're struggling with burnout. But it can also do the opposite. It can be this, oh my God, I have to wake up an hour earlier. Oh my God, I have to take my cold shower. I have to read my prayers. I have to. And then you're done with all that stuff, which you thought would be your self-care routine, but you're burned out afterwards. So again, it's so important to split it down to say, okay, what benefits my soul? What, best example for me is always mothers, because a mother will give her life for her children in a heartbeat, not thinking twice about it. But for every mother, they learn at some point that in order to be able to keep giving, they need to first give to themselves. They need to first take that hour away and just go for a walk. They need to make sure they eat right. They need to make sure they have that space, because when they have that, they can do what they want to do, which is serve all those around them. And so that's really how I work it with my clients, where I bring it back to, hey, I know the reason you're burning yourself out is because you want to serve those who you love, or, give to the world. You can do that better if you first take care of yourself. And so that's really the key.
Absolutely. Steve, awesome. I'm a fan of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Oh, yeah. And when he was training me and the group of people I train with, I got to train with him personally. That was a great privilege. But he asked the question, have you ever been too busy driving to stop and get gas? And it amazes me when I see people who I got some people smiling here. Evidently, you guys have been too busy driving, stopping to get gas.
Oh,
I
yeah.
hope you found out that was a mistake.
Oh, yes.
But
I typically look down. I'm like, oh, I'm at
very
eighth of a
quickly.
tank. I need to fill up.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with self-care. Is that you can help more people if you maximize your self-care. If you're dead, you help no one but the undertaker.
Yep.
This is just a thought, it's not a question, but it also reminds me of, when you're on an airplane and they talk about you have to put the oxygen on yourself first before you help somebody else in the event of an accident with the plane. And the reason for that is if you're trying to help somebody else and you run out of oxygen, both of you are going to be in serious trouble.
That's such a great example.
And I would be remiss and I would be shunned by my own son and his girlfriend and their best friend if I didn't ask these next few questions. What is Kundalini Yoga and what are its benefits? Because Amrit, I'm telling you, these kids, I shouldn't call them kids, they're early 20s, they are eating up with it. This is why we have a yoga pose, because I did that in their honor. And one of them is becoming a professional yoga instructor, and I think they'll probably watch this episode. And so what are some things you can share with them to kind of, educate, maybe even wow them about Kundalini Yoga and the benefits of yoga?
Yeah, for me, I started yoga 30 years ago, where it was kind of this woo-woo thing out there, right? And it was all about turning yourself into a pretzel and being super skinny. And so that was not my thing. I was like, why would I want to do that? But then when I came to my first Kundalini Yoga class, it was very different. It was very dynamic. It had a lot to do with the breath. It was very powerful. All the energy, the exercises were very short and energizing, was very challenging. And for me as a 20-year-old, where I was thinking like, oh my God, I can't hold my arms up like that old guy over there. I better practice. And for me, it was really like it reminds me a little bit of this scene from that old cartoon Mulan, where she has to carry these 2 buckets up the mountain and none of them can do it, and they spill the water and they fall. And at some point she gets into this mindset of, I can do this. And she carries these buckets to the mountain running. And that's the practice for me of Kundalini Yoga, is to challenge myself to such a deep level where I can bypass that limitation I put on myself. And I practice that every time I practice Kundalini Yoga, to push myself into what I can do. And so what the outcome from that is that I walk away from the practice really empowered, full of energy, and so much happier.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is.
And other benefits that you've discovered by practicing yoga regularly? My son's friend, Garrett, shout out to Garrett if you're watching this, Garrett. These questions are just for you, man. We're doing you a solid here. He actually spends a few hours a day. It's my understanding doing yoga. He wants to he's so dedicated at this. What do you think that he can expect from this? Because he's 22 years old. After
amazing,
doing a few decades of yoga, what do you think he could reasonably expect as a return on investment for all the hard work?
Well, so my recommendation would be to experience a lot of different types of yoga, so you can really see what's out there. Because then what happens is you see the commonalities and you see what yoga is really about. And then you find your path into it. And what I'm getting from it. And for me, really, the yoga was a preparation for meditation. It allowed my nervous system and my hormonal system to come to a point where I can now sit down, close my eyes, and sit, and really have an experience to go deep in my meditative practice. So yoga was more like a tool for me to dive deep into meditation. So that's really what I would say he can expect, because every day's practice gets you one step closer to that.
Have you noticed that the carryover effect is that the quality of your breathing has become improved at a subconscious level?
Oh yes, very much. Because like with everything, I mean, you practice it a lot and it becomes so unconscious that, you know, in a stressful situation, in a challenging situation, that's really when you fall back to the level of your training. And if your training is to be able to breathe deep and provide a lot of oxygen for your body through your breathing techniques, it allows you to connect to your strength rather than fall apart when the going gets tough.
And you know, I think that is the huge benefit is you don't wait to have a house fire before you run to Walmart and buy a fire extinguisher. You prepare by having one available. And so these techniques that we're talking about, the psychology and of success and spirituality, is you don't wait for your life to start crumbling to start practicing these things, but you make spirituality a part of your life today and tomorrow. You set yourself an appointment on the calendar to do your mindfulness, to do your meditation, to do your yoga. And then when challenges do come, like Amrit just spoke of, well, you already have your fire extinguisher. You don't have to wait for it.
Or find what you enjoy and practice it. If it's, you know, whatever gets you in the present moment. If it's breathing, great. If it's yoga, amazing. If it's walking in the forest with no podcast in or with no music, just to be present in the moment, that's what you need to practice, and make it a routine. Make it a 5-minute thing every day where you honor yourself and you just sit and breathe. Do something small and build on that.
That's fantastic. And I'll just cap it off by saying one of the things I've said to so many people. Don't expect that in doing this stuff, you're going to start floating 3 inches off of the sofa. Stop looking for
that's
experience.
For a couple of weeks later.
That's the advanced yoga, the flotation. But how do you decide success? You decide success by making yourself an appointment to do these things, and then you show up for your appointment. When I practice my mindfulness doing my weird coffee mix, how do I know I've been successful? Because I've done it. I have kept my commitment to yourself. I'll leave you with this. The success of spiritual engagement is engaging in spiritual things. Not all the flotation and the fuzzy wuzzes and everything, but making and keeping a contract with yourself and something greater than yourself. Amrit, thank you so much for being here. This was such a lovely conversation, and we appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Hope you have a great rest of the week. Audience, thank you for joining us. T-ballers, come back and see us next time. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, guys, and thanks, Amrit.
Bye.
Hey, T-ballers, thanks so much for being with us today. If we brought value to your day, show us some love by leaving your positive feedback and inviting some friends to listen in and join the T-ball team. Next time on Therapy Bites Art Lab.
Today we are very privileged to have Mr. Jesse Fisco. He is a serial entrepreneur, created multiple businesses in multiple states. He is a NLP nerd, and we'll get more into that. That stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Thank you for joining the podcast. We have a lot of cool stuff coming up next.
Government legal gobbledygook. Therapy Bites is not intended as a diagnostic or as an alternative to professional clinical treatment. Resources and advice are for information and entertainment purposes only. Brought to you by someone saying things you don't like? Tape that nagging loudmouth shut. Government-approved speech tape. Gas tape. Now available at your local hardware store. Therapy Bites Art Lab is not an approved, endorsed, authorized, butt-kissing affiliate of the United States Special Offense Assessment Police. SOAP for short. Warning. Consumption of Therapy Bites Art Lab content by Kool-Aid drinking, stinking, thinking, social media, pseudo-psychological pushing, wacky woke, anti-free speech, mumbo-jumbo advocates may cause spontaneous internal skull combustion, stomach discomfort, and or laxative effects. Allergy warning. Therapy Bites is manufactured in a facility that challenges nutty distortions, processes nuggets of accurate, realistic thinking, and life-affirming beliefs. This is the audio version of the legal fine print. Why are you still listening to this when you can catch the next great episode of Therapy Bites Art Lab with a good friend or family member? Really? Are you still there? This is getting silly. Move on to the next psychologically thrilling episode of the best advice on the net. No copay required.
Me eat copay.
Yeah, with Dr. Heath and the T-Ball team. Go ahead, don't be podgoraphobic. Scoot, scoot, scoot. On to the next episode.